Barefoot meetings. I write poems in meetings when bored with the present and seduced by the past. Today's scribbles recall a barefoot boy and a long-haired dog running along the creek on warm summer evenings through a life that demands remembering. What others drone on in prose that lack action verbs and brevity, my muse leans over and whispers, "Here's a line, kid, get busy." I begin to pen memory stanzas, and my toes, confined in dress socks and wingtips, feel the warm mud of poetry.
Well, that was Barefoot Meetings from home with John Sherman, and this is John Sherman. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Fun. And what's interesting, we've already been sitting here talking for quite a while. I'm not going to go into that to why, but it's already been a fun conversation. I almost could have joked the long time no see. We've done a couple of events now together.
Yeah.
But before that, it had been quite some time since the Poetry Alliance hadn't, when we'd heard you reading. And
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So poetry still keeping you busy?
Yes,
what
I
else?
love it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I do poetry workshops now at Mound State Park, and I got a grant from the Indian Arts Commission for the Arts in the Parks and Historic Sites. And for the first time, I used to teach, and for the first time, I'm working with a lot of kids who are like lower elementary. And I thought, I don't know, I love it. And they love it. It works out beautifully.
And what do you do with them?
Well, in a span of about 45 minutes, I talk to them about, poetry, and then we get, prompts or trigger whatever, we write them down on the board. It's about the state park, but it can be anything. It doesn't have to be the mound builders, it can be squirrels, it can be nature, it can be whatever. And then they take some or all of those words or new words and write a poem. And almost every time somebody will say, "I've never written a poem before," and it's like, they're 8 years old, okay?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And then they end up writing the poem, and many of them have to illustrate it. And I said, okay, but you have to write the poem first. And then they read them to each other, to the group, and in 45 minutes, we do that. So it's fun,
Yeah, no. How far back does your poetry writing go? 8 years old, or?
The first time I seriously wrote poetry was in high school, and then I continued in college. And many years after that, this was on a typewriter, not even a carbon copy. So when I found these, they were on a piece of paper. That was it. I mean, there was absolutely no copyright. And I read them, and they were horrible. And I wadded them up, and I threw them away. And then later
I
thought,
wish you hadn't.
Well, later I thought, did I do the right thing? Well, I happened to find one more, and I crumpled it up and I said, yes, I did.
Oh, really?
So I have almost nothing from college, and I went to Peace Corps meeting after that.
I did that too.
Yeah, and the isolation of that, then it really encouraged me to write poetry.
Yeah, and you don't crumple it up and throw it away anymore, though, do you?
No. I may hit the delete button now and then.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
not too often.
Because I'm guilty of that too, or I wiped out just tons of stuff I'd written in high school, actually junior high and grade school, and I wish I had some of that just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And you've done some writing other than poetry as well, haven't you?
Yes. I wrote we lived in Santa Fe, and I wrote a pictorial history of Santa Fe in one of New Mexico, one of its house.
We were talking about that's fascinating.
Yeah. And so that was, I mean, just what an incredible experience, because I was sitting down with people who were, the youngest people were in their late 80s. Some people were even in their hundreds.
And I bet they were saying they'd never written a poem or written anything either, right? Okay.
Well, and they would pull out photos that even their own family either hadn't seen or they were just bored with them. And they ended up in my book sometimes because they were just, they were fantastic. And my goal was, the 350 photos, I think 2, maybe 3 had been published before.
Okay.
And deliberately the others had never been published. So that kind of writing, and I did a memoir of working with the Red Cross in the Nigerian Civil War. I did a book for the International Center here on immigration, Central Indiana, things like that.
And you actually had like a column in the newspaper then?
Yes.
In the Santa Fe?
Yeah, in the Santa Fe Reporter, right. And it was, a lot of it was political humor. which, as you can imagine, often writes itself, right?
Right.
So you
And we'll just leave it
we'll
right
leave it
there.
right there. Yes. It was challenging sometimes,
Yeah.
but it was also fun, you know. But I also did, I don't know, social satire. I wrote about, you know, being a dad, or being, you know, this kind of thing, you know, or I was teaching at the time and stuff like that. So
Now, we were talking, I think, and you said you were compiling that, or you were thinking of compiling some of those columns into a book.
yes, if anybody watching this wishes to underwrite that, yes, I have a series of columns. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I went through them, and the political ones, even I don't understand some of the references anymore because they were long enough ago, you know. And I thought,
Somebody might,
who was
though.
that? Yeah,
And somebody might.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but they also they'd sort of lost. I mean, they were pretty current, you know, of course. So they kind of lost that interest.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I took the ones of, you know, growing up and this kind of stuff that are timeless, so to speak,
Right.
and I have maybe 60 some of those, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so yeah, so I'm
that would be, yeah. And
That's
we
on my
both
list,
know
yeah,
it's tough to self-publish a book. Now, your poetry books, they were self-published.
they were self-published, yes.
Right,
yes.
and I see War Stories sitting on top,
Yes.
the Marjorie
Right, yeah,
Remains.
yeah, and this was self-published as well, yeah.
Yeah.
This is the memoir of I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Nigeria, and I said it was not a typical experience because about a year later we were evacuated because the Civil War began. The area that I was living in seceded to become Biafra. This was in the mid-late 60s. And so we were evacuated. I went to Malawi. Then I came back on my own to work with the Red Cross in the same general area. So that's what this is about. It has photos in there I took of the wartime, yeah.
Okay, and then that's the one I'm most familiar, the Marjorie Main
Marjorie,
one, because
yeah.
when I remember back in the at the Poetry Alliance open mics, you did a lot of the poems from that. And what inspired that one?
Well, the title poem is about, I wrote it a few days after the actress Marjorie Main passed away. And I didn't even know at the time that she was a Hoosier. I just knew that the Ma and Pa Kettle movies I just absolutely loved. I mean, but it's really about my mother's mother, my maternal grandmother, who was like Ma Kettle in her lack of housekeeping, let's say.
Oh, okay.
No chickens in the house, even though they lived on a farm as well.
Right.
But it was, you know, it was just, and when I wrote this, my cousins and my other relatives and my sisters and stuff, they said, oh, yeah, I mean, they were just laughing because we loved her, but she was not, you know, she was not a cook, she was not a housekeeper and all this kind of stuff. And so it's really dedicated to my grandparents because I really adored them. And yeah, my mother grew up on that farm 2 miles from our farm, yeah.
Okay, you know, just what I was thinking is close family, but far enough away.
Yes,
Something
exactly.
like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, and I can tell, you know, you're somebody, whatever you've been involved in, you just enjoy it immensely, and I can see with that. So I was going to say, what is it you're enjoying immensely right now?
Well, enjoying might be a kind of a tough word for this one, but I got a grant from the Arts Commission to do a series of photographic profiles of women who either have chemo at the time I'm shooting their photo, or they've just undergone chemo. So there's going to be an exhibition at the Harrison Center this October in one of the galleries, and I'm going to have a dozen of these. There'll be 40 inches by 40 inches, and I love the profile. And I thought of this when I was at a reception one night, and you know, people were standing around having a drink and talking. I started looking at profiles of people, especially those who had very little hair, so you saw the curvature of the head. And I thought, that would be an interesting thing to take profiles, you know, instead of straight on. And you start thinking about, you know, even Roman and Greek coins had profiles, and our modern coins have profiles. For some reason, our bills don't, you know, they have straight on, right? So I got to think about that, and I started thinking about doing men because they have a variety of hairstyles and short and stuff, I mean, in a shorter sense. But then I thought, well, how would I include women? And it suddenly occurred to me, women who have undergone chemo very often have little hair, no hair. So I'm shooting this series, you know, and I've got just a couple more to do, and then they'll be blown up and they'll be on exhibit. So it's been what a journey for me to go through this, and then each one will have a little bio beside it saying when I took the photo, and I'll remind the women, you know, what month and day it was. they will say where they were with their particular journey and so on like that.
Okay, so I understand. Yeah, enjoy probably not, but you're very passionate about
Yes,
it, and
yes,
you
yes, yeah,
certainly
yeah.
give all your attention to it.
Yeah, and they're very grateful. I mean, they're
Yeah.
very willing to participate, and what is called looking forward, because usually I have them angle their head just slightly up, and
Okay.
and a very tight shot, so it's just the base of the neck. And so if they have jewelry, I said small earrings are okay, but no necklace and stuff like this.
Right.
And and no head covering, so they don't wear their wig or scarf and so on like that. And then so it'll be, I mean, that 40 inches by 40 is really their face and neck. I mean, that's it, you know. But that was fascinating. That is fascinating. So it's called Looking Forward, and then the subtitle is Beauty, Pride, and Defiance. And we're showing the beauty of women who often would feel very vulnerable because their hair is
Right.
very short, is gone, and so on like that, and obviously for a very sad reason. Some of these people, I mean, they're cancer free and they're in remission and so on too, thank God. And then the pride, they're very proud of themselves, and the defiance is like to cancer like that.
Yeah, there you go.
so it sort of fits all those things, yeah.
Now, I was just curious on this because I guess it's the idea striking me when you have the exhibit. I was thinking, it's another thing you could do, maybe have poets come in and select one of the pictures and
Yes.
they could write a poem about it.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
so that might be something to do.
Yeah, I like that idea, yeah.
Oh.
Well, I think I'm hoping that this exhibit will have a life of its own, that it'll be exhibited other places, and that people might wish to, have 2 or 3 of them. They wouldn't have to use all 12. I mean,
Right.
that's quite a number of them. And so, that would be of interest. And I've talked with some people talking about collaborations where they may
Right.
use them. They might use them for fundraisers for cancer research or something like that people look at them and so on. So
That'd be awesome. Now, if anybody is interested in getting the CD or the books or just more information about anything you talked about, where can they do that?
Well, I have a website for my PR firm, but the website I use for my artistic creations is, and I have to say it, I have to spell it. It's a little different. Okay,
Okay.
It's mesaveritypress.com, and I lived on Mesa Verde Street in Santa Fe. That's where it
Okay.
came from. So if you know Spanish, you'll get it right.
We'll put it in the description. I'll get it.
Okay, yeah, very good. Okay, so but it's MESAVERDE.
Okay, and they can get the books through there, and
Yeah.
they can get more information about the other things you
Yes,
talked
exactly.
about.
Yeah, including the opera that I wrote. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, multifaceted here. We didn't get to that. Talk
Yeah.
about the opera.
Well, this is based on my experiences in the Civil War in Nigeria, and so I got a creative renewal to go to Nigeria, but at the time it was so risky just to go on your own in certain parts of the country, and which was very sad because when I was there. This was during the Civil War, outside the war zone. I hitchhiked a good 1,000 miles, just from Lagos all the way up to Maiduguri, where the Boko Haram are very active right now, and so on, without a worry in the world. Right, you're out there on the road, and instead of going like this, you hitchhike this way, right? So I'm out there hitchhiking and just going along. Sometimes public transportation, but usually, I can get a ride with somebody. I decided I got the grant. I was going to go, but it was. Very reluctantly, it was like, it's just, it's risky. Now, I have been back since then a few times, but under the guise of, a conference, something like that. So I was at the Annapolis Opera one night, and I thought, an opera? I've loved opera, but I mean, I can't write music. I mean, I'm no musician, and I can't sing even,
Oh.
But I decided that I would write it based upon my experiences and upon experiences of people that I knew about, So, unlike most operas, it really is true, what you're seeing. Now, I don't put myself in the book is a memoir, so obviously I'm at the center of the book, but I don't put myself in the opera.
Okay.
But there's a woman, Paula John Ingram, who's from Annapolis, an incredible singer. So you go to that website and you can see the 20 minutes that we had performed out at the Arts Garden. And she read my book, and then she read that part of the libretto that we were going to do. She said, "John, I'm playing you." because I had been dispensing medicine for the Red Cross, and that's what she's doing in the scenes and so on. So it takes in all these things, and we had it at the Arts Garden, and now we're seeking to raise funds to complete it. Nathaniel Bloom is the composer, and he's also, when you see it, he's the conductor as well. And and then we want to film it, and I've got people in Nigeria who want to film it on location, and then also to translate into Igbo, which was the language of the main people of Biafra, and do it. It's not actually the first Igbo opera; it would be the second Igbo language opera, and do that as well. And I talked to a composer, one of these Renaissance people. He's a Catholic priest. He's a composer. He's a this, he's that, and the other, and so on. And I said, if this is translated in Igbo, the music is written for the English, of course, because that's the first version. And he said, you wouldn't have to change it very much, because Igbo is a tonal language. That's why it was almost impossible to learn anything in Igbo. It's so musical, it's tonal, so it really would require very little changing.
Okay.
And so, I have just a few words of Igbo in my current one,
Okay. Well, it sounds like one thing, you have something for everyone.
I hope.
I hope so. Everybody, well, I guess we'll have the website in the description, and everybody can find something. I think go and take a look at it. Thank you for sitting with me today.
Thank you.
It was great
Thank you.
having
Appreciate it very much. Yes.
And thank you for watching. Would you take us out with another poem?
Yes, happy to. This one's called Inhaling, and I have a series, and on my website you'll see this well. I have a series of posters of my poetry and photography. And sometimes you choose a poem first, sometimes you choose a photo first, sometimes you do both. This one's called Inhaling. Sitting safely near the edge of rain as the downpour pools the lawn, I think of lighting a cigarette after all these years. Sipping coffee under the overhang, I scan the paper's folded front page, deliciously content, save for that teasing cigarette. Distracting me suddenly are smiling screams of two drenched young women as they dash hopelessly up their long drive across our flooding street. Smiling with bemusement of my old desire, I breathe relief it has been 30 years without 40 Winstons a day. Setting down the paper and holding the cup in both hands, I stare at the neighbor's lane, exhaled of its wet, laughing women, pondering how we sometimes yearn for things we know we should not have.